I gotta make another video about this just because it's something that is so important and so hard to really put in practice. And that is the temptation to just waste a bunch of time scrolling. And it's just incredible. It's incredible how easy it is to just pull out your phone, hang on to it like you're just addicted to holding it, and then start scrolling through something. It could be Facebook, it could be Google News. It doesn't matter. Like, it just is ingrained in our culture. We want to do it. We're addicted to the phones. And then there's other stuff I think to myself I would like to do. Like, I want to play my favorite games. I want to do some quests and finish those up. I want to write a book. I want to do any number of other things. And then you think, well, okay, do I have time to do all this stuff? Do I have time for hanging out with friends and time for work and time for gaming and time for writing and time to sit down and have dinner and time to go spend time outside and all the different things that I like to do in a day? And then I think to myself how much time I probably spend just scrolling through stuff on my phone. And this is not a new thing. Like, I've thought about this, I've tried to address it before, but it's so easy to fall into the same cycle. And then before you know it, if you really analyze your day, you realize you're wasting a lot of time on this, and it's not something that's even delivering anything. It's just that feeling of, I guess you get this dopamine hit of maybe somebody liked something on Facebook, maybe somebody had something to say or tagged you in something, or maybe somebody sent you an instant message or something, and so you're checking, like, do I have, a DM? Do I have something to look at that's new? And then you just get all excited anytime there's something new in your alerts that you can click on and scroll through, and then next thing you know, you're back into the scrolling down the list of things looking for nothing, really, watching random stupid videos. You wake up, grab your phone, start scrolling. If it's a day off, I could find that I wind up just laying there in bed and I wasted maybe 20 minutes. I'm not sleeping. I'm not getting up. I just grabbed my phone and started scrolling through random junk. And then the day goes by and you realize, well, what did I do with my day? I don't know. Like, time went by. Well, did I do the things I wanted to do? Because I'm not saying that social media is bad, because it's not bad. Like, I genuinely enjoy being part of groups on Facebook. I enjoy the thought of having a casual connection with other people who maybe I wouldn't otherwise have a way to stay in touch with. I'm not saying it's bad. And that's the problem with this issue. Because you could say, oh, I'm going to quit social media cold turkey. I'm going to give it up 100%. I'm not going to go on Facebook anymore. I'm not going to be on the internet anymore. And that's not really the answer. And I think that's something that is another thing worthy of discussion here. Like, what are we doing if we're in a place in our life where moderation is not possible? And the only way we can have a certain level of normality in our life is to completely give up something. Even if it has good elements to it, we have to give it up entirely because we can't trust ourselves. And if that's the case, now, if it's a true addiction in the form of substance abuse or drugs, something like that, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just wanting to do something that is not helpful to us, and not having the self-control to rein it in and to set personal boundaries in our life. And there's so many habits that we have. It's not really addiction, it's a habit. It's like people who swear too much, and then every other word is a cuss word, and the F-bomb becomes an alternative to normal use of language because maybe somebody has a small vocabulary and that's the only way they can think of to express themselves. It's just a bad habit. And then after a while, it becomes a lifestyle. And what we really need to do is just cut back on all of the things that do not add value to our lives so that we can proceed to make space for things that do bear good fruit in our life. You know, I would rather say that I spend an hour working on a writing project versus saying I spent an hour scrolling through a Facebook feed full of things I probably already saw. Life is too short to waste on that kind of thing, but it's not too short to spend doing things that we truly enjoy. So my challenge is set some boundaries and say, okay, I'm going to look at Facebook once or twice a day, but I'm going to devote 15 minutes a day to this, a couple times a day, not 2 hours a day scrolling through stuff because I'm bored. And instead, I'm going to spend time doing things that have been on my bucket list that I wanted to do, like finishing up some quests in my favorite game, or doing some chore that I otherwise might have procrastinated on. Whatever it is, there's a lot of time we can free up in our lives when we stop allowing ourselves to have these habits that essentially make tools which should be useful to us become things with a life of their own that use us instead of us using them. I think this can't be talked about too much because I think it affects all of us so much. We could talk about this every single day probably, and it would still be relevant. Because just think about how much time you get back if you just give up the things that you wouldn't even miss. Then think about how many things you've said, oh, one of these days I'm going to get around to that. And then you wonder, why didn't I get to it? Well, maybe because I could have watched an entire season of a TV show in the amount of time that I spent scrolling social media in a week. You know, like that's just the truth. And then, you know, like I have time because I'm single. I don't have to worry about family obligations right now, but I still think about these things because that's my goal, right? Like I don't intend to be single forever. That's not the objective. So, and I have been married. I have lived in family situations where you wind up not having a lot of personal time because you're trying to deal with juggling various chores and responsibilities and things you have to do. So how do you find time to do things that are your own personal hobbies, to do things that are your own interests, to pursue those things, and also have time for your work and family and social obligations? Well, you have to prioritize things. You have to eliminate those big spaces of wastefulness in your life, which wind up making you feel like you never have enough time. I couldn't tell you how many people there are I know who will tell you they're too busy to play games. They're not gamers, they're too busy. But then I think, well, how much time do these people spend on social media or watching random TV they don't even care about? And if you really analyzed their screen time is overwhelmingly high. Like I even my boss, for example, I spend a lot of time because we travel together sometimes, and I'm, I know him pretty well, and I think he spends a lot of time on his phone, and a lot of time it's for work or something too. But he also, just like all of us, he grabs his phone, pulls it out, and starts scrolling through all of the work-related things, the work chat with other employees, and so forth. And how much of that is necessary? How much of it is it really for work, or is it for just the addiction to screen time? The addiction to see, is there something new? Is there something else? And then maybe there's that feeling of being spread too thin later on, like I never have time to do what I want to do. Well, okay. But how much time are you spending scrolling through things? Whether it's a work thing, whether you're following the news, whether you're following your social media feed, it doesn't really matter. It's that endless scrolling habit to find something and start scrolling. We gotta rein it in. Like, that's probably one of the most simple and also major things that we could do to get time back in our life. And my concern is, to what degree do we sacrifice other things that we really would enjoy? We don't have time to, hang out with a friend. Don't have time to do something with family. Don't have time for that hobby you want to pick up. And if we really thought about it and analyzed it, a big part of why we don't have time for those things is because we're filling it with filler that's really basically just junk. I don't think there's probably anybody who will watch this that's not guilty of this. There's nobody that's going to not benefit from re-evaluating their screen time and finding ways to be more mindful about it. But I also think it's important to say, how can I be more mindful and be more disciplined while also not going ditch to ditch and saying, okay, well, I can't control myself, so I guess I have to, shut down my Facebook account. Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, somehow you got to find a way to have balance in your life, to set boundaries for yourself, and then abide by them. And in closing, the final thing I'll mention is just that if you can't set boundaries in your life for something simple, like how often you pull your cell phone out, then what other things in your life do you not have control over to set boundaries and abide by? Things like whether you can control what comes out of your mouth, what you say or what you don't say. Whether you can control yourself to keep your word. When you say, I'm going to do something, to actually follow through and deliver on what you said you were going to do. Like, it goes on and on. There's so many examples of this. And I think that that's just as important as getting some of your time back. It's learning how to keep your word to yourself. Because in the end, there's no one more qualified to manage and run your life than you. You have to go to yourself as the highest command that you can go to. There isn't any higher place. There isn't any other more pure form of judgment or governance in your life other than you. So you've got to get to a point where you can trust yourself to make decisions that align with your own sense of best interest. And if you're not there, set some boundaries. Start practicing that. Because there's a lot of times when we want to blame everybody else for things that aren't whole or aren't the way we want them to be in our life. But we also ignore the big things that are in our control. Have you ever been frustrated because somebody else didn't consider the importance of your time? They just didn't care. They didn't think about whether you wanted to give your time. They didn't ask. They just imposed on you, and they assumed it's fine for them to impose on your time, take up a little bit of your day, and you think, I had things to do. I was trying to get some things done, and now you just sucked up some time I'm never going to get back. You ever have that feeling? Like, I know I have. I'm pretty sure almost all of us have. And yet, how often do we take away our own time, disrespect our own boundaries, have things that we want to do, and then instead of doing those things, we just waste that time? And then later on, we're like, my goodness, I had things I wanted to do. I had things I wanted to spend time on. Oh, I guess I'll do it some other time. And it's a vicious cycle. Because sometimes we are our own worst enemy. And it doesn't help that we live in a world which tends to try to capitalize on our weaknesses. But it's the world we live in. So you can't blame the world for distracting you, when ultimately the truth is, if we are distracted, if we are consumed by things disproportionately, it's our choice. So let's try to make better choices. Give consent to the way you spend your time. And that doesn't mean that you have to walk away from everything either. Find a middle ground, find balance. Make commitments to yourself. And then practice keeping your word. Just as it's important for other people to keep their word in your life, so it's just as important that you keep your own word. And when you make a goal, when you set a boundary for yourself, respect it. Good luck on your adventure. Till next time. Thanks for watching.